So one of the things about the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, Genesis is nice because it's got nice stories. The first part of Exodus is great because it's got nice stories. And then here from the later part of Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, people start feeling, this is a bit boring, né? And why all these laws and all these strange things that the Israelites must do? And yes, indeed, they are strange for us these days, but something that helped me in reading these 5 books, or especially the last part, is thinking of where they are. So imagine, these people are slaves from Egypt. There they didn't have, their life was structured by the Egyptians. Now they've been freed, and they're going to a promised land where they have to start a community and a society from scratch. And if you have to start a society from scratch, you have to think about how to do it. And that is what all these laws is about. God cares enough for his people to say, I'm going to give you laws so that you can structure a society that is good and beautiful and testifies to me. I mean, let's think about it now. Imagine you were chosen as one of 1,000, no, let's say some 10,000 people. 10,000 people being sent to colonize Mars. No? There you go. You land there. How do you manage this? What are the rules regarding going out of the spaceship, or managing the terraforming, or digging to see what's under the... If you are suddenly with 1,000 or 10,000 people and there's no structure, no rules, you're probably going to get some trouble. So these 5 books, it helped me to realize God is preparing a society, these people, so that once they enter the promised land and they settle down, they will have a structure to their society where they can work together. Still means some of the laws are really strange, and some things are not the most exciting things to read. But at least it makes one realize God cares enough that he wishes a society to be beautiful and good and fair. And he speaks about everything then. And in this case, what we're going to read tonight about is property law. Who studies law here? I know there's quite a few. No? So tonight we're going to look at ancient Israelite property law, and we're going to start with chapters 27. For now, we meet the daughters of Zelophehad, Mahla, Noah, Hochla, Milcah, and Tirzah. 5 names, which some are more striking than others. And they come, these 5 women, before the leaders. You read them. It's Eleazar, the high priest, Moses, the assembly. And they come to explain their situation. And they say, listen, our dad is dead. And we are asking for land. And why is this important? Why at this moment are these ladies doing it? And for that we must go 1 chapter back. Numbers 26, there's a census of the tribes of the Israelites. And that census is geared to something that happens towards the end of chapter 26 that is very important, that says that tribal areas will be allotted according to the census, where God says each tribe of Israel will have a certain inheritance. If you look through, a lot of Bibles also have a map, either at the beginning or the end, where they say, this is where the 12 tribes lived, this was the area of Judah, this was the area of Reuben, this was the area of Gad, this was the area of Ephraim and Manasseh, etc. And that followed because the Lord said, once they enter the land, I will give each one a portion of land that belongs to that tribe. But now these ladies come and they say, listen, we would also like land. Why? Our father is dead, like we mentioned. And we are not married. We'll see that later as well. So who will the land go to? Because in ancient Israel culture at that time, land usually went to the male offspring, the son. But in this case, there is no son. Usually what would happen if there's no son, a mother would be asked to marry, or if there's no son and a man dies, the woman, the mother, must marry the brother of her dead husband. The reason being, in their minds, that the dead husband and the brother are close to each other. So if the mother must marry this brother-in-law, and any children born from that marriage will be considered the heirs of the dead man. They will be the sons of the dead man, and they will get the inheritance. But in this case, there's no dad, there's no mother, because there's nothing said about her, and the fact that the ladies come and ask about the land implies there's no mother to marry again and get a son for Zelophehad. So who will the land go to? That was supposed to go to Zelophehad's descendants. And the women have a very important reasoning that they bring to Moses and the other elders. They say, our father's name should not disappear from Israel. Our cultures as well, a lot of times our ancestors are important in the sense that we remember them. I can tell you my grandfather was a pastor, my father's a pastor, my grandfather to the 7th generation was a pastor, and their stories have an impact on me. It's important for me to remember that these people, did things that I can learn from. And for the Israelites as well, it was important to remember who came before, what they did, what their deeds were, what their name is. If people referred to, you had a good name, it's not just about you have a nice name, it's your whole character, your personhood. And they say, our father's name, our father's remembrance, his character should not disappear from Israel. But the thing is, one way you were remembered is by the land that you were attached to. By the inheritance of your descendants. Say, my grandfather's grandfather's grandfather, his name was Isaiah. He owned this land, and we remember him because he gave it to his son, and their son gave it to their son, and their son gave it to their son, etc., etc. And so Isaiah is still kept in remembrance. So the women say, listen, if there's no son to inherit the land, then our father's name will be forgotten. This person who is part of Israel will be forgotten, and that is not allowed to happen. So that's one good argument why they should get the land. The second is their position as women. Remember, your position as a woman in Israel was determined by a male relative. He was your legal representative. He was the one that represented you in other settings, that spoke for you. So a woman that is not married, has no male relatives, and has no land, is totally destitute. She is desperate. Especially if you think most of the economy was a farming economy. That's how you survived. So if you as a woman had none of these other aspects, life is not looking good for you. So they come before Moses and the others, and this is already so striking. These are brave women. These are courageous women. These are the high society, not the high society, but they are the big leaders. Moses, we know of, Eleazar, the high priest, the fathers or the leaders of the tribes and clans are gathered together, and these 5 women approach them and come forward. They show initiative to make a move because they realize there's a problem. They are brave. They are courageous. And they are insightful in the arguments they use. And it's important about when they choose to go and where. Because they approach these leaders, we read, at the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, the place of God's residence among his people. So they are also, in a sense, saying that this is something that has to be decided before the Lord. This is a spiritual issue as well. This should be decided with insight from God. So they present their case, and Moses goes to the Lord. And it's interesting, some of the rabbis in ancient history that also read this passage, some were like a bit embarrassed. Does not Moses not know the answer immediately? He's most the great prophet. But other rabbis said, no, this is wonderful. It shows Moses' humbleness. He does not know the answer because there is no legislation for this yet, what the ladies have mentioned. All of you know in law, you have certain laws, but suddenly a new situation arises, and now you have to develop the law to deal with the situation. And this is the case here. And the rabbi said Moses is humble enough to know when he does not know, and to go and ask the Lord for insight. And the Lord answers Moses, and I love the decisiveness with which the answer comes, because God said, you must certainly give them property as an inheritance. This is clear. The Lord is not, making any ifs, buts, and maybes. He said, these girls or women must get the land. And then the thing goes further. The Lord doesn't just answer Zelophehad's daughter's request, but he starts giving guidance on what should happen if a man dies without any daughters as well, with no descendants. And then it says, then it goes to, this man, then it goes to his family there and there and there. So he says, only in the case that there are no male relatives, only in the case that there are no daughters do the other male relatives come into play. And this is fascinating, because this means the daughters of Zelophehad's challenge to Moses and their request to the leaders did not just change the situation for themselves, but for every other woman that could come after them in Israel. Because the Lord says, this is now the rule in Israel. If there's a man that dies without sons, his daughters must inherit. So these 5 ladies changed the future for any woman coming after them. And maybe that's why their names are remembered so well, and why I read them again and again, because every time in Numbers and Joshua where we read of these women, their full 5 names are given. They are honored in the history. And it's actually quite, I don't know if one should call it ironic or touching or surprising, but they were concerned that their father's name will disappear because he has no male descendants. But now everyone remembers Zelophehad because his daughters were the one that made sure that they remembered. He is remembered, but not because of his sons, but because of the courage of his daughters. In the end, they provide not just for themselves and for the women coming after, but even for society as a whole. Because if you go read that again tonight, it gives a very full explanation of what should happen in this strange case of no sons. These women caused the issue to be resolved on a much wider scale than initially thought. They made a huge difference, not just for them, not just for the women coming after, but actually for society as a whole, to get clarity on property law when they move into the promised land. Now, as many the case, they've sorted out one thing, but if we continue in Numbers, we see, hang on, there was another question that came up. And that's where we go to chapter 36, where we will read together as well. And we see, once again, this new situation in law requires a new answer. So, chapter 36. The family heads of the clan of Gilead, son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, who were from the clans of the descendants of Joseph, came and spoke before Moses and the leaders, the heads of the Israelite families. They said, when the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land as an inheritance to the Israelites by lot, he ordered you to give the inheritance of our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. Now, suppose they marry men from other Israelite tribes, then their inheritance will be taken from our ancestral inheritance and added to that of the tribe they marry into. And so part of the inheritance allotted to us will be taken away. When the year of the Jubilee for all the Israelites comes, their inheritance will be added to that of the tribe into which they marry, and their property will be taken from the tribal inheritance of our ancestors. Then at the Lord's command, Moses gave this order to the Israelites. What the tribe of the descendants of Joseph is saying is right. This is what the Lord commands for Zelophehad's daughters. They may marry anyone they please, as long as they marry within their father's tribal clan. No inheritance in Israel is to pass from one tribe to another, for every Israelite shall keep the tribal inheritance of their ancestors. Every daughter who inherits land in any Israelite tribe must marry someone in their father's tribal clan, so that every Israelite will possess the inheritance of their ancestors. No inheritance may pass from one tribe to another, for each Israelite tribe is to keep the land it inherits. So Zelophehad's daughters did as the Lord commanded Moses. Zelophehad's daughters, Mahlah, Tirzah, Hochlah, Milcah, and Noah, married their cousins on their father's side. They married within the clans of the descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in their father's tribe and clan. These are the commands and the regulations the Lord gave through Moses to the Israelites on the plains of Moab by the Jordan, opposite Jericho. So once again, we come to a point where the Israelites suddenly realize, hang on, here's a situation where there's no law for yet. Because they come to Moses and they say, as we read in chapter 27 or 26, they say, God has given each tribe of Israel a certain portion of land. Yes, God gives this. And then they say, but also now, as we heard in chapter 27, God decreed that the daughters of Zelophehad should also receive land. Yes, this is the case. And now suddenly the question, but what happens if they marry? If they find a nice other Israelite guy to settle down with? Because like we mentioned earlier, because it's a male-centered world, if they marry, their property becomes their husband's property. That's how it worked in Israel. And now the leaders start realizing this could cause a problem, because if these women, Zelophehad's daughters, and the ladies coming after, marry someone outside of their tribe, then the property not just becomes the man's property, but it becomes another tribe's property. For example, these ladies are from the tribe of Manasseh. What if they marry someone from Judah or Benjamin? Then that land goes to Judah or Benjamin. Or one day someone from Reuben's tribe married into Gilead or one of the others, and then the land will go across to the other tribe. If that continues happening, you may have a situation where one tribe has suddenly got a massive portion of land and another tribe doesn't. They have this little piece left over. Their inheritance, their portion that they received from the Lord, will be lost. And that is not just theologically problematic, but also socio-economically. Because like I said earlier, most people lived from the land. No? You survived because you farmed the bit of earth that you had. So now, what happens if all the land of one tribe moves to another tribe, but that tribe still has a lot of people? You'll suddenly have a situation where a tribe doesn't have the land anymore to care for its members. You have a massive socio-economic problem that will develop if land constantly moves away from one tribe to another. So Moses gives instruction from the Lord, and he says, the daughters of Zelophehad can of course marry, but from someone of their tribe. This is to ensure that the tribal land stays the same. And once again, it becomes a principle for the future. They say, as they've confirmed in chapter 7, daughters can inherit, but as a further rule, we add, if they marry one day, they should marry within their tribe. And it becomes a principle for the future. And it all flows from the one central principle in verse 9. No inheritance may pass from one tribe to another, for each Israelite tribe is to keep the land it inherits. So the story ends with these 5 daughters marrying their cousins. It's a bit weird for us today, not as strange in that time. We read in the first 5 books it happened quite a few times. But ignoring that, they had their whole tribe to choose from. What is important to realize when they marry into their tribe or within their tribe is they are being obedient to the order God has given, that things should stay in the tribe. And this is so important at this point in Numbers, because if you read that last verse, it's a little note, but it says so much. These people are in the plains of Moab across Jericho. They are at the point of entering the promised land. In fact, Deuteronomy comes after this, and we think because it's such a long book, it's a long time that passes before they enter the promised land in Joshua. But no, Deuteronomy is a speech by Moses. So, while it's long in chapters, in time it's not that long. They are at the point of entering the promised land. And if we look back, the first generation from Egypt, God said, you won't enter the promised land because you were disobedient. The golden calf story in Exodus and all those things. The first generation out of Egypt did not follow the Lord as they should have. And they died in the wilderness. And now the question is the second generation going to be obedient? Are they ready to enter the promised land? And in Numbers, we see a few signs. Yes, these people are ready. They are obedient. But one of the clearest signs is here at the end, when Zelophehad's daughters obey the Lord and marry in their tribe. It seems a bit weird to us, but within the bigger structure, they are showing the obedience that is required of the Israelites. They are becoming a symbol of who this second generation is. People who will be obedient to the Lord. These 5 women display what it should mean to be an Israelite, someone who follows God. So we can learn so much from them, from these daughters, but also from the whole process that they start. How they encourage people to develop new ways of faithful living in Israel. Because when they come with their problem, there is no current legislation for the issues they mention. And Moses and the rest have to think and pray and bring the word of the Lord back to them. And there's a few pointers for us. Like I mentioned, the whole process starts at the tabernacle. When we encounter a new situation for which there's no rules written, a good place to start is meeting with the Lord and praying for wisdom and asking for His guidance. But the second also is to look at what God has already said and to develop insight from that. As I mentioned, God has already said here in Numbers 26, each tribe will have their piece of land. That is the base principle you guys are going to work from. So the new legislation should honor that principle, should follow from that law. And that's what happens in chapter 27 and 36. And that's so helpful to us, because if you think about it, there's so many situations we come in that the Bible has no direct laws from us. The Bible, you won't find a Bible verse saying, thou shalt use AI in this manner. You won't find a Bible verse that says, this is how to fill in your tax return. This is what you should do on your computer. This is how you should handle fake news. You're not going to find a verse on that, unfortunately. But what we can do is we look for principles in the Bible that we can take and then develop them further in ways that give a bit of an answer to these topics. For example, the Bible praises honesty, integrity, faithfulness, hard work. All of those principles already give us a bit of insight into how to handle the situations that I just mentioned. This is not an easy process always. It's not a quick one. It's not one with ambiguity. Without ambiguity, I mean. But that is the place to start. What are the lines that we recognize in the Bible that we can develop further for our situation so that we know how the Lord will guide us? So to close off, guys, let's learn from Moses, where when we realize, oops, I don't have information on this, we go to the Lord for guidance and insight. We seek insight in the presence of the Lord. We go look at the principles in the Bible and think how to develop them for our situation. And then, may we be brave and resourceful and insightful and full of initiative like the daughters of Zelophehad, whose actions not only changed their own future, but the future of all the daughters and even society that would come after them. That we may be people who do not only seek to make a difference for myself, but also those coming after me.